This day in tech news with your host, Joshua Peck. Well, I hope you're all having an amazing day, and let me start off with some things I want to do with this podcast. I'm working on a few things, and it can take some time to write them up. I understand that being consistent is key with anything we do, so I want to be consistent and start with a weekly podcast. Starting today, I'll be launching a weekly podcast on not just tech news, but just tech-related things. I'm still going to keep the name Tech News with Joshua Peck. So let's get started. I want to talk to you about the Chrome OS and CHROMEBOOKS. Chrome OS had initially released in June of 2011. That is over 10 years ago. Time has definitely flown. Since then, I haven't really touched it with a stick. With most things Google, we usually see it die off, but since it has been available for 10 years, I thought, you know what, I'll give it a chance. And I don't get test units or anything, so I have to buy everything out of pocket, but because of that, I get to test it as much and for however long I want. I didn't want to buy a $1,000 laptop since Chrome OS has been touted as a cheaper alternative to Windows and Mac laptops, so I ordered a $380 USD Chromebook. This is about 1/3 the price of an M1 MacBook Air, which I highly recommend. I ended up going with a Samsung Chromebook, a 15.6-inch Chromebook. It has an Intel Celeron N4000, which isn't that great. A base speed of 1.1 gigahertz. I think it goes up to 2 point something. And it's only 2 threads. So not very powerful at all. It has 4 gigabytes of RAM, and I ended up getting the 128 gigabyte of eMMC storage, which I'm not sure is very fast, but that's all fine. I ended up buying it used though, so instead of paying the $380 that is retailed for, I got it for $200. Now, at $380, it really doesn't seem worth it. But it does make it 1/5 or 20% of the price of the M1 MacBook Air. So I really can't compare it to any other laptops because of this price range it's at. So instead of reviewing the hardware, I want to kind of review the operating system, Chrome OS. Now, what is Chrome OS? This is such a Google operating system. Using it for a bit, it feels more like a Linux distro than anything else, like made by Google. This is probably because it was originally a Gen 2 Linux-based OS, and it has now become its own since it first started, but it still feels like Linux. Just like Android phones, Chrome OS devices have access to the Google Play Store, so you can install Android apps on it, and that means you get a bunch of apps right out of the box. Granted, not all apps are available to use, probably due to not being optimized for Chrome OS, but that's okay. I have found that there's a lot of apps you can definitely install. Now, here's what I like. I really like how simple it is. If all you work on is through a browser or maybe an Android app, Chrome OS is great. You could do a lot too with just a browser nowadays. And it seems really nice and cool when running, and I don't even think there's a fan in this one. So if you get a cheap one with the limited CPU, it works well as long as you're doing only one thing at a time. So like streaming on YouTube, streaming Netflix, streaming social media, editing a file like a document for school or whatever. I mean, that's pretty much what you could do with it. Currently, they have a thing called Linux Beta, which looks to install Debian Linux, and when installed, you'll get a Linux Beta terminal window. You could type in Linux commands, install tools using a package manager, and more. And not only that, but the latest version of Linux Beta even allows you to install the KDE desktop for a more traditional experience. And you can install applications built for Debian Linux, which has tons of support. So that's kind of cool, and I really like that. So what's not to like? Well, for one, it has the same problem Windows laptops have, and that is a manufacturer could put together the worst hardware together and put Chrome OS on it and sell it to you for dirt cheap. This makes it seem like the OS is at fault, when in reality, it is the hardware that is at fault. Because the OS itself seems pretty good and stable, at least from the limited time of testing. Now, I am unsure if this is a problem for all Chromebooks, but the keyboard layout is weird and takes some time to get used to. For example, instead of caps lock key, it's a search key. There's no print screen key or home key or Windows key, and I feel as if you have to relearn shortcuts. And for someone willing to learn this, it really isn't a problem, but more of an annoyance coming from another operating system. If you're new to all operating systems, you're not going to know that this is annoying. Currently, there's also no big applications like Adobe. I didn't see any support for that. And storage options for low-end models seem to be pretty bad. I mean, I've seen them at 32 gig. I think I also saw 16 gig one time. And RAM, I've seen as low as, I think, 2 gigs, which is just horrible. I think right now they're all at 4 gigs and minimum 32 gigs of storage, but that's just horrible. But all in all, it is a great laptop, the one I got, but I will not be making this computer my computer of choice, because Mac OS and Windows are much more mature and provides me a better experience, in my opinion. Well, that is for today. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please like and subscribe and let me know your thoughts of Chrome OS and Chromebooks. Are you thinking about picking one up? Have you been using it since launch? Let me know in the comments. Have a good one. Thanks.